Hello. Can everyone hear me?
Hey. Yeah, there we go.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I just like I don't even know what I just did. I did a weird thing and everything got messed up. That was bizarre. Okay, we're back.
Oh, I just
So
reverse
yeah.
image searched your wallpaper, found it, done, you're done.
Yeah, no, I had accidentally closed the Zoom window while trying to open it, and then yeah, who knows? It's up though. And then I lost this and I couldn't start the audio, so playing. Wow.
Playing.
Well, hello. How's everybody doing tonight? Doing
Can't
pretty
see
good.
anything. I'm blind. It's terrible. Lost my glasses in the ocean. Rogue wave got me. Unable to see. Can't read the news.
You know, the ocean's a pretty big place.
Yeah, the Pacific Ocean doesn't have a lost and found either, so I'm sure out of luck there.
It does. It's at the RTB for all the drones. 00.
Yeah. Anyone do some cool stuff this weekend or this week? Last week, since we didn't do a show.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time working on a couple different tools that I'm gonna release soon. It's just I'm in the process of doing that thing where, you know, when like if you go through like a tool that you've written to do something, but you just want it to be like normal, so that you don't have to like do something stupid to make it work better, and then like you end up re-architecting the whole thing.
Yeah, that's the best feeling, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun, but at the same time, sometimes you get like overwhelmed by like design choices and other sort of little nuanced things when trying to make something portable rather than just running on like this one specific directory in your machine that everything's like symlinked to.
Oh my god, the number of times I've rewritten something and gotten just bogged down by the rewrite, and it would have just been faster to deal with the crappy stuff to begin with.
I've just been studying insert hell.
Yeah.
I will tell you from experience, though, that the tool is fucking awesome.
Thanks.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to put it out there.
There's also the other side of it though, where like you're over engineer something, you're like, oh, it's gonna do this and this and this, and you end up writing like all this like structure that you're gonna use later, and then it comes to like
Yeah,
function,
use
take
it.
a break, and you're like, I'll pick it up. Never.
Yeah.
My favorite's when I build something on my desktop and then like a month or two later I go to put it on my laptop and I go to install the libraries it's using and it's using a different version of the libraries or something messed up, and then everything's all backwards and I just go, oh well, I guess I don't need to do anything ever. Goodbye.
Yeah, that's the standard fare. I guess it's just, yeah. I mean, like when I write stuff, I usually try to do a pretty good job of writing things that'll be reusable for later. But sometimes I just write things so fast that like to solve a specific problem in the now, that sometimes I just like will lose track of stuff. And sometimes I won't even write things to be the same like script. I'll just write several scripts that I end up chaining together, which then like I'm like relying on already shitty code to then plug into other scripts, and it's just like, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
My personal bash and Python hell. So, but
my favorite, having to debug like 30 scripts at once that feed into each other. Like, oh god.
Yeah.
Print everything in all the scripts.
Yes.
It's called programming.
Got here one, got here two.
Exactly.
I always put like oof in my stuff, and sometimes I'll forget that I put it as an exception, and it doesn't even like print the exception. It just says oof, and I'm like, god damn it! Like, I'll see it, and it'll sometimes be something that like didn't happen, and then it'll be in the middle of a bunch of stuff that did happen, and I'll just notice it, and it's just like a little like this little call, like you screwed up somewhere, dude. Like fix it. But yeah,
it's not like a really vulgar swear word or a set of statements. I've seen people who put that shit in production code and that ends poorly.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. Just like just swearing.
I've been super diligent about not using print and using like log levels in Python. I don't know.
Well, you could also use a lovely debugging tool. Python.
Oh, look at these actual programmers here. Gross.
I mean, like, because I was writing JavaScript, like writing Node. Sorry, but for so long, like using like a logging library to do stuff just became habit, and I'm like, I never do this shit in Python. I always just do like every time I print, I do like the square brackets plus because my exploits are mad late. And
Python's got a solid printing library too, or solid logging library too.
Yeah, you like I've got a formatter that I copy paste now that does that. So if I do like log info, it's the plus and it's in green. You know, it's like 4 lines of code to copy and paste around.
Well, you could do like log cycling and stuff with their default logger.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Also,
Hey,
I like
all right,
this.
so we should
Oh, I was gonna say, I like the background. Today's
Oh,
anime
thanks.
background.
Yeah, I'm running out of cyberpunk gifts. Please send me some.
Oh, please
You heard that,
remember,
everyone. Blow up at ThugCrowd with cyberpunk gifts.
if you have a favorite anime or mango, and
Mango.
yeah, or mango or mango, and it, you know, you can take you can capture a little loop that's totally cyberpunk as fuck. Please do give us
Yeah.
some original content.
I love it. I have a lot of old VHS tapes I could pull from. I get lazy because everything's last second as always. But yeah, we should get into the news because we're going to be doing basically tonight just news and try to play with this concept because realizing that we get a lot of guests and tracking down guests and like thinking about guests is like, I don't know, we don't always have to do that. So sometimes it might be cool to just do news sometimes and just have some people who might have been in the news stories that we're sharing or in the write-ups. So I shared this, I'll share it again. It's our notes. Anybody in the chat needs this? Boom. Yeah, so we had a lot of stuff. We actually did a survey the other day asking people what their favorite part of the notes are and what's the most useful. And I'm thinking that Goodreads and resources and the cheats are everyone's favorite, even more so than the news because everybody sees like the big news stories that we might cover. But not everybody sees like some of the smaller write-ups that we'll throw in. Like sometimes it's our friends or somebody that we might just know that doesn't really have a big reach. And so we get a lot of really cool stuff that people send us. And we notice a lot of stuff too. And we aggregate them in a channel in our chats, and we're able to pull them all together at the end of the week. And there's a lot of really cool stuff a lot of the times, especially in the cheats and resources section too. So yeah, we actually have an authors of one of our Goodreads here. The Red Teamer's Guide to the Pulse Secure SSL VPN, which we'll talk to you in a little bit. So a little brief overview of what they found because they've been working diligently on a number of really creative ways to exploit the Pulse Secure VPN stuff. So that'll be dope to talk to.
I mean, we have a lot of different some guys some people are looking at like I look at mailing lists a lot, and so like I'll paste those links and then it's a race to see who gets the news in, but everyone's sort of looking at all different their own aggregate sources as well. So it's really good, like having, I guess, the crowdsourcing things.
Absolutely.
It's actually a lot harder than you guys think. Like a lot of people are like, who's the guest? Where's the guest? What's the news? Like, yeah.
Yeah,
Magic
definitely.
happens.
It does. Usually we're flying by ringing a prayer. So, but if you are somebody who has a write-up that you've done, or a resource or repo you want to share, or any exploits or POCs that you've written that you want to share, definitely let us know because we can always throw them in here. A lot of people read this. A lot of people download our show notes beyond even just watching our stream or listening to our show. So there's a lot of reach. So definitely, if you have anything cool, you can always tag us or DM us, and we'll take a look at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's get into it. If somebody has anything else to say. No? Okay. So the first story we have in here is pretty cool. It's actually really scary to think about if you're somebody who plans on retiring at any point. Some cyber criminals, you're not unmuted. Some cyber criminals, people had stolen $4.2 million from a state trooper's pension fund. So basically they had owned this this financial investment manager who was working for the Oklahoma Law Enforcement Retirement System Agency, and they were able to just siphon money out of their account by compromising their email, that's pretty crazy that there's like a single point of failure like that, where one person can just get hacked and then everybody loses their retirement or pension. That's like what a lot of people use to like live, you know.
I think there's a lot of like people who have set up things like a retirement fund, for example. The people who it's meant for have started this retirement fund, you know, maybe before the internet even, possibly, you know, and then they're like, oh, now email manages it, and then it's like one person, and it's like the email that's on like, you know, the XM server that is there's a CV with the RC root RCV root CVE RCE bug in the show notes, but yeah, if you do enough recon and find the right person, there's always that linchpin somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is like especially scary because like this is like safety net stuff, right? Like usually like when things get broken, there's like a fallback. This is people's fallback, and this like actually people's like, you know, backup plan and like what they're actually living off of. So it's like that's scary for like that kind of thing, right?
Well, it's always interesting to think about, like, you know, on a day-to-day basis, most of the stuff that we're dealing with, I mean, depends on the person, but a large number of us are not necessarily working with that kind of like, if this system gets screwed over, you know, people's lives are ruined type thing. And just thinking about that kind of critical system failing is concerning.
The problem with government is funding, obviously, too. They're not going to get exactly talented people who pay attention to this kind of stuff. Like I'd interviewed for a State Department, and I was kind of amazed. And at this point, they're like, "Oh, you want to work like 4 days remote a week?" And I'm like, "Okay, like how bad is this?" You know?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like all you need to do is like read the news story about the IRS like having to pay Microsoft how much for like to continue supporting XP, like really government stuff. Like
when you talk to financial people about you know, this kind of like about money, financial people want financial problems. They don't want to hear about computers. So if you can get insurance on the money, like then it's insured. Who cares if they steal it or whatever? It's going to cost us this much for insurance, blah, 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 money, financial solution. That's,
I mean, that is a fair.
Yeah, but that's like totally not in the vision of like cybersecurity. Like we're like,
right.
Insurance is for like when everything fucks up. Like we'll just protect the money, and then you don't like, you know, you're not going to have to, you know, get the insurance.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's the same deal with like Bitcoin versus banks. One of the advantages that banks have over Bitcoin is if they fail, you know, or somebody steals all the money, there's insurance on a large portion of that.
Yeah, definitely. Not to say we don't love Bitcoin or Dogecoin, and you can donate to us. The address is something one thugs for Bitcoin.
Yeah, if you look at if you go to thu.gg and you go to the You Wanna Thug 2.0 link, the Bitcoin address is in there for the fake ransomware. Which, by the way, has still continued to serve a lot of laughs and gas for people who just leave that open on their desktop at work, just full screen it. So it's a lot of fun. But the next story that we have on here is pretty cool. The DMV. I guess I didn't even know about this law, but there's been a number of laws that have been trying to prevent DMVs from being able to sell personal data of you, like your license, like data that you can't, like, you have to give to them. They are just allowed to sell it, and there's like a couple of different things that have tried to stop it because DMVs have gotten in trouble for selling to like private investigators that are funded by stalkers that are trying to like kill somebody, and other unsavory people. And so, yeah, I think this kind of exploded because it's pretty interesting. But I didn't realize that DMVs could still do that.
Yeah,
or at all.
Quite a bit muffled at the end there, you. But
sorry.
Yeah, so like identity documents obviously being super confidential private data. We saw with the Binance KYC dump, like a lot of people's you know, photos with them and their driver's license have gotten out. But there's like this really critical problem with copies, like digital copies of physical documents like that. So if you have a single scanned original like the original digitization of a document, and that's worth, say, I don't know, like 50 points or 70 points of identity, and you need 100 points or something. But then you make a copy of that file and you send that exact file to somewhere else. Is that document now worth less because it's in the hands of 7 different places that are going to secure it, that it could potentially be breached and then reused to identify? So it's like,
I think the thing that's the most concerning is that DMVs have the most current data about you, because a scan of a driver's license could be from any time period. Like, I have a scan of John McAfee's license. I don't know if it's valid still, but it's not as valuable, I guess, to an attacker as if you call up the DMV that has the information, the most current information about him, and ask for that. That's a lot more valuable. That's what's the most concerning to me, is that not that they're like third parties. This is the first party, and it's a government agency that is somehow able to sell your information to whoever asked for it, or whoever has a good reason.
Yeah, it's a clone of like the first digitization of it. So
yeah,
guys were saying that there's no money in government. Come on.
I know. What are you talking about?
No, I mean, it's
They can
frustrating.
use
Like
that money to make the DMV actually work.
Oh yeah, I don't think that's what they're going to use it for. Yeah, no, it's always frustrating with stuff like that, where there's an agency or even an organization that people rely upon or are required to use to kind of function in society, and they're exploiting that fact. Yeah.
No, absolutely. So speaking of other handing over data to people that you might not want to, this next story here from Forbes is pretty interesting, where the feds are demanding that Apple and Google hand over names of 10,000 plus users of a gun scope app. So apparently there's this, I didn't even know that there's an app that can do this, but there's an app that you can use to calibrate your scope for a gun. And the Department of Justice is trying to get information about the users of the app and demanding that Google and Apple step in to do it. Because obviously they have to go through the developer. I mean, Google and Apple aren't necessarily going to have all the information about them. I mean, they might have like who installed it and stuff, but there's probably more detailed information that the actual developer has. And so, yeah, I don't know why they would really do this, but it's an interesting precedent. What?
I mean, there's a couple of things with it. So, like, the app allows you to do, like, to sight in a weapon. It allows you to record taking a shot. And so basically, it's correlating people who own a specific, because, like, as we saw with the Christchurch stuff, where people are live recording, their firearm usage. This, where the actual scopes, because the scope is not a weapon, obviously, but it's attached to a weapon, and where they're sent out, there's licensing and regulations about the countries and places they're sent out. So I guess if this scope turned up somewhere in Syria, or I don't know, Iran, or somewhere that there's a sanction on selling this type of thing, then I can see why they would want that type of data. But to blanket grab everybody's data, like, because if you purchase the scope, okay, if you from a registered dealer and blah 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 blah, you obviously have a license and you're a responsible owner or whatever. And I guess they're looking for anything outside of that, but they're at the same time just totally breaching the privacy of anyone who legitimately has taken tests and keeps their license up to date, and there's a whole bunch of different things, and they wanted phone numbers and details about these people, which that doesn't really seem fair, because you bought some fancy scope off because it's cool or whatever. You're into tech, you want a digital way to sight in the weapon that you go hunting with, or they're used for sporting or whatever. It has nothing to do with any malicious act.
Yeah, the thing about this that really got me is, first of all, 10,000 users on an app is a very small number. It's I wonder, you almost have to wonder how this showed up on, the Fed's radar in the first place. The other thing is, right, like people who have these are going to be more technologically sound, like probably more technologically savvy, probably use other internet stuff, and like the amount of information you can get from that allows you to trace these people's footprints to other places is probably like pretty high. And so this sounds like kind of the like surveillance kind of thing. It's like just targeting people who own weapons in a way.
Yeah, it's a roundabout way though, because the direct way is like people who purchase weapons, but this is not a weapon; it's a scope, and they're not tracking the scope; they're tracking the app to track the scope to find the people who own weapons, which it's a very roundabout, invasive way to to loophole their way into tracking it. I don't know.
Well, and maybe they're not just looking to collect names either. Maybe it's just a first step in them getting more data or like audio or video and photographs of people who are ghost gunners and dialing in on those individuals.
Yeah, or the other thing I was thinking about is like a lot of people have like modified weapons, right? Like obviously someone's firing like an automatic weapon in a place where automatic weapons aren't allowed, right? There's GPS you can tie to like that kind of stuff too.
But they can't actually. So that from what I understand, the app just saves the video to the device, to like a phone or something. It doesn't, or like I think laptop maybe. I don't know. So it does, but it just has the app installed. It doesn't actually allow them to get access to the recordings, which could be shooting watermelons or jugs of milk. I don't know, whatever.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's sketchy at best. Like I think Apple, or I hope that Apple and Google will fight it, because it's not really their domain to like sort of, since when have Apple and Google been involved with like ITAR licensing? Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's like a backdoor that they've tried to pull.
Yeah. So speaking of big companies' data, I don't know. This huge database of Facebook users' phone numbers was found. I want to find more information about this. Did anybody actually see this database in the wild?
So I did not see the database, but I was talking to the person who found that information over a channel that we're in. And it's interesting. I don't really know that much about it, but it seems unfortunate. I don't think there was anything other than phone number, birthday. Actually, no, there was quite a bit of information. I think it was mostly scraped public information was my understanding of that.
Yeah. So that's what they had said on here, is that they had said that it was over a year old. And a lot of it is older because that's when Facebook started restricting access to that information to their APIs. But it's still there. I mean, this kind of data sources are out there. Like there's tons of giant databases of just random scraped stuff that somebody might have tried or some company might have tried to sell, and they just sit there just randomly, like in the middle of something with no password.
What's horrible about this though is you could nuke Facebook right now. Like you could just thermite every disk, like all the backups, and this data's still out there and relevant.
Yeah, you're never erasing those records, basically. And I think the other thing is like, there was an event like this with GitHub a little while ago, where somebody went through and scraped all that information. And I think that, people were basically saying, no, it's public information. Well, so for Facebook, it's slightly different, but regardless, it takes a lot of time to aggregate, scrape that information, and to build that database. And so you're basically just making it a lot easier for people who are who don't have the expertise or the time or the resources to do that, to, spam or scam people or, phish them.
I wonder if, it's obviously always cat and mouse with this kind of thing, but I wonder what kind of behavioral analysis could have been in place to watch for scraping across Facebook's cluster that serves these APIs. I mean, obviously, after the fact, hindsight 2020, we could say all that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, you would think that would be kind of simple.
Well, it's simple until you look at the distribution of that kind of thing, right? You can approach it from 10,000 IP addresses and scrape slowly and make it look fairly.
Yeah, that's
Just like you do with Sedan.
I mean, you could
Yeah, I
also
think that-
use like, you could have a Chrome plugin or something that you entice
That's
a million
malicious.
people to install. It feeds it back slowly, just through natural browsing. Like an ad block.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the other thing is like with this type of thing, one of the things they could have done to reduce the amount of abuse or poison the data is if they had fake users return from that API. But I think it's pretty clear that API should never exist in the first place. So.
Yeah, no, that's the thing is it's hard to. I feel like it's hard to do the sort of retro on this kind of thing because a lot of it was already sketchy and it's been coming out as sketchy, and so a lot of the stuff is just like sort of like what's a quick way that we can expose X, Y, and Z to third parties who want to pay us extra money for this. Like it's because it's sketchy. It's not going to be like as properly logged or as properly audited in the way that other applications with APIs like this would use. So that's where a lot of these random weird issues that come in. Where you're like, why was this even open? Like, why could anybody even scrape this? Like,
well, a lot of
plain text file.
A lot of this is like there's a Snapchat database that came out a while back with the same kind of stuff, right? But it's because like it ties in so well like to their business model, right? Which is get more people on, get more people connected. So that allows you to import your phone book, and then all of the numbers in your phone book are related, relate to users and whatnot. And so it's like they have a fiscal incentive to have these kind of things public facing, which presents a problem because like a legitimate user might be doing these like 200 at a time, these lookups.
Processing.
Yeah, right. Like when you upload your contacts, if you do that, right, you're looking up a giant number of these. So even like looking up things in bulk, like wouldn't flag this. So it's one of those interesting things.
I mean, that same thing applies not just to like Snapchat, but Telegram, or like when it looks up your phone contacts, or like Signal, Wire, whatever thing that looks at your contacts, looks at your contacts. It's interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, for a while, Facebook, I think it probably still does. Facebook Messenger would just grab your entire contact list and a bunch of phone records and just pop them up.
I love it when they ask and they say, "Do you want to import your contact list?" I'm like, "Hell no."
Well, even like Keybase recently did that.
Yeah, it's like there's people that you contact, like I don't know, say a real estate agent or someone, like you're not friends with them. You don't want to talk. You don't want to spend any more time with this person than you have to. It's purely business relationship. It's like I don't want to add them to social media.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that the real thing here is Facebook having this information in the first place was probably not the greatest idea. They have probably more information than they needed to have available in that API. But then the other thing is also like the fact that somebody scraped all of this information and just kind of left it hanging out there is a bit of an interesting thing.
Is this Mongo though? This database? I don't know if they.
I think it was Elastic. Let me. I don't know if the article says.
I mean, it could have been built by the attacker, or it could have come out that naturally that way. But
I'm fairly certain it was Elastic.
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah.
I mean, also you see like a lot of these lists that come up a lot, right? Like if you look at the "Have I Been Pwned" copyright TM Jet Ski Incorporated lists, right? There's a lot of like what they call spam lists on there, which aren't really breaches as much as someone found some dumb shit that was attached to the internet with 500 million people's address, phone number, Facebook likes, etc. So it's like this kind of stuff it's definitely already been out there. So it's like I would say the impact, it's weird that the impact of this is so like low at this point, it seems, because so much of it's already been leaked so many other places.
I think that also just like the value of associating somebody's name, their gender, their country, their location, their phone number, alone those pieces of information are not necessarily that valuable, but when you associate those pieces of information with one another, they can be quite a bit
I think the main takeaway from all this is if you don't have social media or you have kids who don't yet have social media, then maybe educate them a little and be like, look at the mistakes humanity made before you, and try and make smarter decisions. And that's really hard to do, especially in the integration of social media into society now. But there's got to be some kind of pushback against just like handing over everything you have.
Yeah, and the problem is that as long as websites and social media are, like I said, financially motivated to pry all the information they can from you, they're going to keep doing that.
I think this is one of those things that the only way to fully fix this problem is to introduce some sort of legislation around it. Like there's certain things like that where sure everybody could stop using Facebook, but that's a pretty drastic thing to get. Like trying to get people to do that is a losing battle.
It's also too late for those people who are using Facebook. Like moving off it is a good move, but like that doesn't fix the problems that already exist.
Right, your information is still out there.
Yeah. So, what's next?
Next one,
servers.
Pretty cool. This 47 super micro servers are exposing their BMC ports to the internet. So people had found some research. There's some research that came out last week where they had found some vulns in the BMC firmware, and that was cause for alarm because there are between 47,000 and 55,000 super micro BMCs exposed online. So BMCs are things, or they plug in for what's it called, remote management for switches and other important gear, and
So,
there
like,
are
on
vulnerabilities.
Like think about like the easiest way to think about BMC is if you're familiar with ILO or anything like that. It's an extra network card that's a system on a chip that controls the motherboard. In this instance where we're talking about BMC, so you turn the machine on and off. You can mount storage. It's a full, usually a cut down like Linux or Minix system, and you can do all kinds of provisioning to the hardware when the device is off on a separate network. So the fact they're on the internet is absolutely insane. These should be on closed networks.
Yeah, absolutely. But then the thing is that 4 vulnerabilities came out about it, including plaintext auth, unencrypted network traffic, weak encryption, and auth bypass. Where the auth bypass is pretty cool too. What?
Supermicro actually. So if you create a VNC session, it uses a Java client, and it creates a token, and the token's like 8 characters long, and that's actually the VNC password. And that'll give you console access. Then it runs dropbear as well. So like I think it's dropbear with a 1024 bit key. So that's not that hard either in the scheme of things. But yeah, lots of fun stuff.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. The auth bypass is pretty interesting too, because basically the state of authentication is linked to the client's file descriptor. So if you are able to make a bunch of connections, you basically will luck out and eventually get the file descriptor of an authenticated client, and then you'll just be authenticated.
Nice.
Which is like, okay.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
It's actually an interesting pivot point as well, because if you have bare metal running like a Windows, for example, and you have BMC, and then you have access, now you can remotely mount stuff over the network, and then you can move between like other BMCs on that network. And I mean, hopefully it doesn't cross over to the actual network, but yeah, it's all very sketchy. And
yeah, absolutely. It seems like just some sort of weirdo Java application that is doing this.
Well, the client for Supermicro is a weird Java. So one of the ones that I've played with is still signed with MD5. So you actually need to run a separate old Java client, like old Java JVM, in order to even run the client. So it should give you an idea of like the age and maintain.
I wonder if you could collide those hashes and still make it like a valid jar file or whatever.
I hope so.
It definitely could.
I very much hope so.
I mean, I think that's the least of their worries with the other.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
and just attach to the internet. But I mean, you can try.
Yeah, so IPMI also allows you to send like power off, reboot, shutdown, like just all the standard stuff that you would like. If you're not familiar with it and you think about like a VM, you've got the options to send those like power commands, like IPMI will accept those. And if you want to play with them and you don't have a BMC to play with or IPMI to play with, there's it's called IPMI Fence is the package, and it's like there's a dummy IPMI that you can mess around with to see what it actually does, and then plug it into QEMU so you can pretend like you have a server that has it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll close this window. Damn it.
And also, if you don't have one to play with, there's 47,000 on the internet.
So let's talk about this next story, and then let's cut it over to Alyssa and Desi to talk about Pulse stuff. So the next story that we have on the list here, 600,000 GPS trackers left exposed online with a default password of 123456.
Nice.
So
Shoot, how did they
from
know
the
my
GPS
password?
tracker, they were manufactured by a Chinese company, and Avast had put some research out where all these different models of GPS trackers all just use this this password here. And so this is similar in a way to that the GPS trackers that we had researched before. MG, Mitch, me, and a couple others were looking at these weird GPS trackers that all tied into some sketchy back end, and you could just authenticate to them or not authenticate them. You could just access the pages for each one of them. It's similar though, where people get sold these things that have unknown backends that anybody can just authenticate to and just have a marauder's map of GPS trackers all over the world. It's pretty freaky.
Yeah, this is like, oh god, there have been so many GPS trackers that have like been hit with the same sort of stuff lately too, right? Like the last one was like the fitness things, which are GPS trackers with extra steps, right? But yeah, it's like same thing. It's like, oh, like has this thing been to any like secure government facility? Oh, then it's boy,
a single point of GPS by itself is actually generally not that valuable. But if you have it over time or you have information associated with it, like it's interesting, that kind of thing for context adds a lot of value.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's what sucks is that there's just all these really, really crappy commercial grade products that get put out there, and people buy them because they see them on like Wish or Alibaba, and it's like $2, and you're like, oh, $2, and I can track my spouse wherever she's going. But it turns out that just China is spying on you, like as usual, from another vector. Like it sucks that like that all the shittiest things that people can do are usually supplied by terrible security software. Same with all the spouseware apps and things like that. Like everything is just there's always something. There's always some like default password somewhere that some random person just can find and do whatever with it. Luckily, somebody actually reported it, because who knows who's been actually looking at this kind of information and aggregating it.
My favorite thing was someone this week posted that like 2% of all passwords in across like these leaked databases have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it is funny.
Like, so when you go, like if you're going somewhere remote and people take GPS trackers just to like check in to know they're safe, it's like the same thing but in a piece of hardware. That's like, oh well, the one that's like everyone recommends is like $400, but I can get this one for like $25. And it does exactly the same thing. It's like, yeah, but your GPS, like your check-ins are now getting sent to China. Like, where you've tracked through the wilderness today is all on record in China, and who knows how it's protected. Like,
so a lot of these boards too, a lot of the GPS tracker boards, what they have on them, they're just repurposed like very, very low budget smartphone chips. And so they need to have a GPRS modem, and they need to have something that has a GPS tracking on it and some interface for it to put, send data to. So they're usually very, very like stripped down, like mobile OSs that would be on it's like it's much easier to do that than to R&D your own board like that. So people use like MediaTek chips. The MediaTek like RT26 somethings, I forget what they are using a ton of them because they're easy to use, but they're also easy to attach a microphone to as well, which is also really scary.
The fact that everything has an app frustrates me. Like a GPS tracker. Why do you need an app for that? Like, it seems like you could do it either by a web application, or like there's other ways that you could do that would be better. I'm surprised that you need to log into a GPS.
Yeah.
There was a project I worked on that was tracking vehicles, like fleet tracking stuff, and there's a thing in the car and blah blah blah. And it was on a closed APN GPRS network. But basically everything over it was like MQTT, clear text, blah 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 blah. Like, it wasn't sensitive data or anything. I mean, like, we're targeting the fleet for some reason that was in the middle of like nowhere. But yeah, and it suited the purpose for what they were doing. But if you were, if that same product was applied in any other scenario, that would be absolutely horrible. And it sort of takes a little bit of figuring out to know whether that is or is not the right thing to deploy.
Yeah. No, it's just crazy. And I implore people to not use these kinds of things, no matter how cheap they are. Because it's very, very, it's never going to be good. Is all I can say. Is any of these sketchy sort of apps. So be warned.
But if you are going to use GPS tracker, use the ThugCrowd branded $2 GPS tracker.
$2 GPS tracker.
Yeah.
If you want to be protected from GPS tracking, then you can use the Dollar VPN Club.
So speaking of VPNs, hey, Alyssa and Desi, are you guys still here?
Yeah, we're still here.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up?
Pretty good.
Yo, so, I want to take a little break from the news to discuss what y'all have been working on, because I've been looking at it. Both of you have been tweeting out your progress on various aspects of exploiting Pulse VPNs. Do you want to, I guess, tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I guess props first. I mean, Orange and Med did really good work with like this research. So just moving off this, there's a whole bunch of different stuff that we figured out like that you can do with this. And honestly, Alyssa, she's the one who got me interested. So
well, do you guys want to, I guess, talk a little bit about what the VPN is and the history of the vulns and your exploit development?
And a little bit about who you are too. Like.
Oh yeah, that too.
She can go first.
No, it's fine. I mean, Desi, go ahead.
Fine. So I'm a red teamer based out of Houston. I get bored as well. Not sure if I can say that, but I get bored a lot.
Yes, you can say it.
Yeah, I get bored as fuck. So it's, I mean, this VPN is used in a whole bunch of different places. I mean, it's, let's see, we found it in DOD, I think it was Department of State too, Army, where else?
Banks, universities,
hospitals, and government contractors that we can't name.
Insurance companies and things like that too.
And it's, I mean, it's a VPN that allows you to do a whole bunch of different stuff. Like looking at the options or anything, you can literally set up like VMware sessions with it. You can do remote desktops. So like virtual desktops that you can log into, or a whole bunch of different stuff for like thin clients and crap. Or, of course, regular VPN shit. But the issue is, it's like, it's, for the most part, there's a few things that are secure, but it's like after one issue, you just branch off to multiple others and it just snowballs. So,
yeah, absolutely.
But
so, do you want to tell us a little bit about, I guess, the vuln chain that you are using? Because I saw on Twitter various screenshots and little GIFs of what you're working on, but do you want to describe to people what the process of I guess chaining together different vulnerabilities and what they were throughout the process?
Alyssa?
I mean,
if I talk a little too fast.
More or less the exploit chain start off with basically the fact that you can arbitrarily download.
Oh. audio cut out? Or is it just me?
I think audio cut
No,
out.
I heard that too.
Still there?
Are you there? Hello?
No, I can go ahead and discuss it then.
Okay.
So essentially the arbitrary file download and inclusion, which is 2019-510. You can basically download any system file on like the VPN server itself.
Yeah.
And due to some godforsaken reason, they decided to store creds and plain text hashes and a whole bunch of different stuff like session IDs in a binary file. So you can literally take that and then get logged into the admin dashboard. So let's say you have admin access. Well, part of the built-in functionality of it is startup scripts. You know, like some companies want to actually be able to mount like shares and stuff whenever you log into the VPN for remote work.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, it's like they'll set a batch script to run, or a Linux bash script or something for OS X. I think it's not a bash script, but oh, her internet cut out. She messaged me. But you can basically use the functionality of that and take it from there. So it's like, let's say, you like in our demonstration, we use Cobalt Strike. I literally just set up a PowerShell payload just for testing and threw an SMB server on the internet. And the thing is, you don't have to have it on the same network, to be honest. Oh, hey, throw this IP in there. It's going to connect out to it and download the file next to it. So there's numerous vectors for like injection and crap. Go ahead.
Wait, hello. Sorry, I think we might have cut out a little tiny bit. Oops.
Did I cut out?
No, I think I may have personally
okay.
when I was, but Alyssa just got back into the room.
Yeah.
Are you there?
Yeah.
But so what were you gonna say?
So you were able to download files, and now with what were you using, I guess, or how were you getting, I guess, code execution with this?
So client-side code execution, we just used the functionality that was built into it, like batch scripts and stuff like that. So like I just used a batch script and then basically threw PowerShell in it. But you can use anything like WMyExec or MSHDA, numerous tools like any red teamer can come up with. It's like, okay, hey, I'm just gonna use this, download an XML file, compile it, and execute code. Or because like in my testing, I use Silent Trinity as well as like Trevor C2 because Trevor. So I mean, anything any command you can run on Windows, you could just throw in a bat script, put it in an SMB server, and modify the session start, and just download that. So then anyone who connects to the VPN is going to have that code executed, and they're not going to notice. I mean, it's just a CMD prompt that pops up and goes away, pretty quick. So I mean, it looks they're none the wiser because usually it does that anyway. Because like, let's say it's mounting SMB shares or something. So that's a client-side execution. You want to talk about the code execution on the VPN itself, Alyssa?
Sure. So with PostSecure on the administrator panel, you have this option to run diagnostic through a TCP dump. Essentially, the vulnerability was focused on the fact that you can inject your own commands in that. And I think Desi could explain more of how it more specifically works. Desi?
Yeah. I did have to get a little bit of help with the login logic. Do you mind if I actually post the GitHub link in the Twitch chat?
No, go for it.
So that way, if anyone wants to look at it, essentially, so the command execution actually lies in how it processes Perl, because you can literally just face roll on a keyboard and it's file Perl. So the way the code execution actually works is they're taking standard error and basically putting that out to a template file. Because setcookie.cgi reads from a template file and then executes it. So essentially, you are taking standard out, commenting off the actual error part, and your file name is actually the code that gets executed due to
That's really cool.
Yeah, no, Orange, whenever he figured out and I read it, I was like, wait, that's ingenious because Perl, because literally you're taking standard error from, Linux command, like let's say you try to execute a file and it doesn't exist or something. So say basically command file name : does not exist. And essentially you're commenting out that out with the pound sign. So it just literally, it's just a go-to way at that point. It's command : and then this. So essentially what you're doing is you're creating a go-to label in Perl, and then you're actually executing that with a system call in Perl. So the file name you set gets executed as, by the Perl itself. So whenever you're actually outputting the standard error to the file, you have to actually query the set cookie.cgi. So the way the exploit works is it's literally, we're sending multiple things, and what's his name? I think it's Rich Warren from NCC. We saw a video and we realized, but he was installing, drop error, the SSH statement. And, I was thinking to myself, what if I can modify the SSH configuration files? So I was talking to one of our friends who, helped us do the research on the exploits and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, we basically figured out, hey, you could literally just overwrite the existing authorized key file and the SSH config, and then just send a sig up to SSHD and kill it. And well, not really kill it, but restart it. And it would load the SSH config. So we literally sent a command to open the ports, the internet, download the configs, overwrote them, and restart SSH. And you could just log in as log in as root over SSH without having a password.
So
that's really cool.
I've seen people do something similar with Redis for overwriting the cron tags.
That's actually somewhat how I got the idea. It's because I was thinking, I could technically do this because all the command execution is running as root, really. So anything you do is run as root, even though you can't really see it's running as root, because for some reason they don't have ID or who am I installed in the box. So it was confusing. I was like, wait, is this running as root? Is it not? And the thing is, it's like, okay, you can get Etsy password, right? But there's no Etsy shadow. So it's like, whenever I tried to get it the first time, I was like, wait, I guess I'm not root because I can't get this. Anyone can get, Etsy password. And then I looked at the file system. I was like, oh, there's no Etsy shadow. Okay, so I am running as root. I could just download anything I want. So got the idea, okay, download files, make backups, copy over, overwrite, restart SSH. Did that, it worked. First try. And then, of course, subsequent testing, it just keeps adding IP tables roles because there's no logic in it. But it was a little bit interesting to make this exploit because the way they handle CSRF, as well as the actual payload, in that code, I had to literally get the URL and build a cookie out of a hex encoded URL, which was interesting because they actually use that and a few other things like the XOF token, which is the cross CSRF, and then the DS launch cookie, which is essentially I'm trying to think of what exactly it is, but it's a hex encoded thing, and it needs that to actually execute the code for some reason, which I have no idea why. But I had to do that, get the cookie, and Rich Warren from NCC actually helped with the logic to get that. And I was like, okay, I can figure this out and throw that in there. So essentially, you can just own the box by sending HTTP requests, which is insane, to be honest.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a really cool little insight into the actual process of discovery and how to actually chain exploits together to do something like that, because that's really cool and it's very widely used. So interesting to see the outcome.
Honestly, I think there's still 5,000 or so still vulnerable. I think.
Dang.
Bad Packets has been checking on. I actually don't know the current number right now, but basically, in fact, we actually got wind that I hate this term so fucking much, but APTs in China were actually exploiting this shit, and I was like, I wonder if they're using our code. So
Yeah,
probably they probably are.
Yeah.
I'm not doubting it.
Oh, Desi, there's about 9,000 still vulnerable to it. Backpack just recently tweeted out how many are left.
Oh jeez.
Yeah. No, it gets scary when you start to see. Wait, what?
If I was APT in China, then yeah, I'd be using it. Anything
Oh,
you can
yeah.
get your hands on, right?
Because
I
APT
mean-
is an APT.
Yeah, you get paid money to yeet exploits at boxes, so might as well.
Basically.
Ooh. Well, thanks so much for sharing that with us. I'm
Yeah.
glad I was following the saga of it, and finally the write up came out, and then I was like, oh, it's time to throw it into our notes, and I'm like, wait, I can just DM you guys and say, hey, come on.
We're actually looking at the next one, the buffer overflow. Give me kind of how the top what NCC guy did, but I don't know if they're going to release the code. So we might have the buffer overflow for Pulse Secure as well. I'll just drop it on GitHub as well. Make a Metasploit module out of it.
That's sick. That's awesome.
Yeah, some real dope work.
It's just boredom, really.
Yeah, basically, just like yeah,
That's
fuck
where
it.
one of this comes from. People just up like, oh, I'm procrastinating. Here, let me just write an exploit.
Speaking of procrastinating, Alyssa flew down here and we just procrastinated the whole time. It's like the last day she was here, I just threw everything together. I was like, okay, it works.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, thanks for stopping by, and you can feel free to stay for the rest of the show, and we'll chat after too about other
Sweet.
stuff. So yeah, beautiful. So yeah, if anybody wants to check it out, I posted their Twitters, and the GitHub is in the chat as well. If anybody wants to hit them up or use the code themselves to test their own work environment. Yeah, the next news story that we have here is pretty interesting. This ransomware gang had ransomwared a city, and they asked for $5.3 million, and the city luckily was able to just back up or restore from backups, but they had tried to give $400,000 to the gang, and they were like no, and they ended up just rejecting the offer and restoring themselves. But $5.3 million is a lot of money.
Yeah.
All right, wait. This is like a straight up like negotiation tactic. If you're trying to get a new job and you go into the interview, you don't want to go too high, but the other
Yeah, you
party's
start
never
high.
going to go up. You start high, you go down. Take the 400 grand and let them get them for backups anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
seriously.
I mean, don't do crime.
The
but,
mistake
like,
there was saying no to the 400,000. You're not going to get 5.3 million. I mean, even from a city, like even for a relatively large city, still paying that much out to a ransom is ridiculous.
Yeah, I think whoever asked for the ransom doesn't understand like the bureaucratic nightmare.
Well, and it's like
city governments exist in.
If you had somebody's wife and you were holding them ransom, you probably still would not be able to get 4.3 million, or however much it was. Like
the highest that's been paid is $1 million. That's like the record. So they're going for over 5 times the current record from a random like city with. It's not like a major city. It's just a city by virtue of the population.
Yeah, I mean, like if you had like the city of New York or something, then maybe.
Yeah.
Wait, do you think if you were ransoming Trump's wife that he would just pay it, or do you think he'd get a new one?
Yeah, the insurance will cover that one. So.
Yeah, no, it's a terrorist attack.
Oh.
But yeah, no, that's definitely interesting though. Ransomware, people just getting greedy and losing out on money. I mean, I don't know. That's interesting.
I mean, I wouldn't agree to pay. Like, in that situation, they probably it's risky to pay a ransom regardless.
Absolutely.
Because you pay it and then they wipe your boxes anyway. Lol. Like we've seen.
I think one of the things is that there's this guy, the Dark Overlord, who is actually relatively good at restoring data after ransoms, and he hit a bunch of those kind of high profile targets. But in the vast majority of this kind of case, they may not even have that data, especially if it's like a worm. There's a pretty good chance they didn't make a backup, just because it takes a lot of effort to capture people's data and store it and give it back to them when they pay the ransom. Right?
Yeah.
Like if you're hitting 100,000 boxes, yeah, like you could just wipe it and you'll still get probably the same rough percentage of people paying ransom.
There was a dude a couple of years ago. He was saying that he could unlock any ransomware, and like he would charge like like a couple of grand over what the ransom being asked was. But come to find out, he was just paying the ransom off and pocketing that extra money.
Yeah, that's a really good scam.
Yeah.
They said it wasn't illegal, that it was just like ethically fucked up. So they like outed him and wrote like a big article about it. I'll try and find it real quick.
Yeah, and we had that in the notes one time. There's a couple companies that have been doing that in general, but yeah, there's like one-off people like, oh yeah, I'll unlock it for this price.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the main takeaway here is that it behooves you to have some sort of business skill or like knowledge of your targets, right? If you are to attack someone, like very obviously, like whoever this is missed out on a lot of money by just not understanding like basic negotiation tactics and like kind of what the city had or might not have had.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, it goes back to, right, like soft skills are important no matter what you're doing,
whether it's crime,
crime, just general job stuff. This is one of those things where yeah, whoever it was could have probably lived pretty comfortably if they had only taken some time to learn the soft skills here.
Yeah, I find it weird that they would have asked for that much in the first place. I mean, like, unless the city's their only target, 400 grand is a lot for a single, like, a single entity to get infected. And unless that's their only target, then, they're still making a shitload of money off of it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You hit like 10 or 15 organizations and get a couple $100,000 each. That's plenty.
Yeah, I mean, also the city has a population of 95,000 people. So you think about how much that is, like, from each person, like, right, like
a single main street town, most likely.
Say 9,500 or 95,000.
95,000 people.
That's
okay, so that's a little bit larger.
$53.50 per person.
Yeah, like excuse me.
Do they spend that much on like clean drinking water or?
Yeah, exactly, right. Like we could have clean drinking water, or we could like pay this ransom. Yeah.
So let's move on to the next one real quick.
Yeah, the next one's pretty interesting. So yeah, we've had a lot of news come out about Hong Kong in general. Everybody's been watching the situation. But the next two stories we have here deal with what the government in China is trying to do and how people are reacting to it. So Hong Kong protesters have been using mesh networks in just in case there is a internet shutdown. There's already been a lot of things being shut down. Is the next story we can discuss as well. But yeah, it's interesting that they're trying to figure out other ways to use peer-to-peer networks to disseminate information, because as long as a phone has that, there's no way, unless you have rooted every phone, which I don't doubt that there's a capability of that being, or that's a capability of the Chinese government. But for the time being, that is something that is very versatile for people who are in densely populated city centers who are trying to quickly send information to each other, which I think is an interesting tactic to fight.
I mean, this reminds me straight up of the Niels net. Like, I don't know, like Whitey Crackers introducing Neil, the story of building the mesh of smart devices to circumvent, the government internet. If you ever listen to the story, it's pretty sweet. But this is the first thing I thought. I was like, that's pretty damn cool. Like that people are getting together, because people have built mesh networks in a lot of cities that are just sort of like point-to-point wireless, and you can get onto this network. But this is just like people with the device in their pocket linking to the person next to them, And you build that big enough, and you'll have enough exits to the internet that's going to be, maybe you have to go out through Tor somewhere, and imagine all those people going out through one exit node. But it's possible. Like, it's a very interesting thing to think about, people like actively participating in.
Yeah.
Just seeing the Hong Kong protests going on, the level of creativity of people, like, using laser pointers to, make it hard to shoot, hard to aim the gas bombs, right? That kind of stuff is just really impressive to see. You know,
Mhm.
the you see the kind of mob mentality happening sometimes.
Yeah.
You see people using all of their heads together to figure out techniques to do stuff. So
Yeah.
No.
It was like someone said, it's some of the stuff they're writing, or not writing, but that they're doing. Yeah, it's some real heads up stuff. Some people coming out of the woodwork. It reminds me of like anarchist cookbook type, like version 2 type
Yeah.
stuff.
hmm the next story that we have on here is in the same vein. Is this private internet access VPN has been blocked in Hong Kong now, where so people who don't familiar with it, like there's the Great Firewall of China, where there's a lot of censorship and blocking of various services, but Hong Kong, it didn't have that level of surveillance and control. And so now this whole little article is about basically the Chinese government using their reach with the Great Firewall of China to basically do the same things they would do in mainland China and Hong Kong, which had previously been independent. So this is just kind of more of the encroaching levels of control that they're trying to put on the people in Hong Kong, because previously people were able to just use VPNs, slowly just pulling these sort of things out. I mean, there's also been reports of services being DDoSed by China to prevent protesters from doing stuff. So there's a lot of this really sketchy shit happening, which is very important to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I haven't. Oh,
Sorry, you.
I was just going to say that I haven't seen any stories about BGP hijacks in the last few days from out of China, but it'd be interesting to see what's been going on in that area.
yeah, I mean, one of the things that we've seen trying to do in the past is just like they have all of these devices, all of this bandwidth from the Great Firewall. Like they don't even really need to censor stuff. They don't even need the PPP, to screw with it. They can just DDoS the hell out of it and shut stuff down.
But but there's companies like PacNet, Pacific Internet, who's owned by an Australian provider, and like a lot of their infrastructure is in Hong Kong, which again, like not behind the firewall or anything. Like that was a strange acquisition. It actually came owned, like the whole network was owned apparently when it's got handed over. But yeah, it's interesting that the Chinese mainland trying to push, like I'm not sure what percentage of the overall infrastructure they own in order to enforce this stuff, and that might be where tactics come into it. Like a Chinese primary school just happens to have a huge pipe DDoSing the shit out of like other pipes.
Exactly. And shout outs to Upgrade Solution for subscribing. Thanks.
Upgrade's always big follower. Shout out, man.
But yeah, no, I'm interested in seeing what else comes out of China. I don't have too much confidence in the situation, though. It's just, I don't know what could possibly happen, though.
Yeah, I think it's gonna probably get kind of ugly because, it already has, but you have a government that is very authoritarian in nature and has had a history of being pretty violent towards protesters, and they are trying to push their control over this country that has a crap load of people out in the streets trying to protest this. So I don't know. I think it's just going to keep getting worse, and it'll be really weird and interesting to see how that resolves.
Well, yeah.
What was MG's comment? Something like be the dystopian cyberpunk future that you want to be.
That you want to see in the world, yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah, China's really ticking a lot of the boxes there. In terms of,
like while it's so cool and the techniques and technologies they're pushing out there, it's kind of still pretty scary.
It's not like a movie or a TV show. It's like this is people's literal reality, like an entire country's reality.
Black Mirror is just like a television stream.
Yeah, it's not meant to be a guideline, right? Like
yeah, that's the whole thing. It's like that's the whole thing with dystopian fiction, right? It is meant to be precautionary or meant to be commentary on something that's going on. It's not meant to be like, this is how you control the people. It's like the exact opposite of the idea, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any future any future that is not dystopian, to be honest.
Well, I mean, the question is, are we already there, right?
Future?
Like, it's not something that happens immediately. It's something that slowly creeps in. You know, dystopia is a silent thing.
Definitely, and I'm definitely not like, I'm hopeful for the future, but I'm also a little.
We're in a rough
pessimistic.
patch right now, for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
This is
yeah.
a rough part of the future.
Yeah, the thing is, right, like especially like with the Hong Kong China solution or like situation, China has a lot of money that like to be made, right, by controlling the area. And it's like
Controlling U.S. bonds.
yeah, right. There's so much leverage, like both politically and financially, to be like squeezed out of this area that it came to the point where someone was like, okay, well, it's now worth it to just sneak in over here.
Yeah, I mean,
But to the entire South,
China has so much geopolitical power. Like, they have so much in trade influence that, they're on the UN Security Council. They can basically do whatever they want to, and other countries are not going to step in until.
Yeah. So that's the South China Sea incident where China claimed a bunch of islands, and basically they were like, no, they're ours. There was a bit of dispute. They said, oh, we'll go to the UN then, and they did. And UN said, no, China, you don't own them. They're like, well, yeah, we do. And then they started building stuff on them anyway. Sketchy infrastructure at best, like military bases that kind of look like residential, but not really. And that's all of that region is south of where we're talking about. So I guess Hong Kong is very isolated and very close. Obviously, if you can drive across a bridge or something and be on like the mainland, right? Or is it a ferry?
Yeah, I mean it's real close either way. Yeah.
It's like negligible in like the scheme of things. So.
Yeah, I mean the point is, I mean you also see China doing things like just building, like just taking dirt and putting it in the ocean, like building more land, like right, just to expand their borders, like just that much more by just throwing dirt into the ocean and like on the beach.
Cartoon villain shit. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's literally like Wile E. Coyote shit. But
well, and it's it's kind of silly, that type of thing. But when you look at what China's actually doing to citizens, especially like marginalized groups or journalists, it really gets pretty concerning. It's crazy to see some of the shit that's going on in China that has been just going on forever.
There's like a group of like Chinese who are like basically designated from birth as like live organ donors. Like, I can't remember what the name of it is, but that's apparently a whole thing. I don't really want to get into it, but I guess people can do all that shit.
Yeah. Just because we are like probably running out of time a little bit, talk about the last two things here. This ESP8266 and ESP32 hacks are pretty cool. The first one, it just seems to be when they send out a beacon frame, you can overflow the amount, or you can put a number in the AKM suite count for the authentication key management stuff. If it goes too big, then you can just crash the system with it. So you said one single keyframe or beacon frame or probe response, and you can destroy you can crash the ESP. And people are, I guess, trying to research some other uses for that. But the other ones were for vulns in EAP that you could use to hijack encrypted sessions with Wi-Fi, which is I mean, if you have an ESP and anything, there are a few commercial products that use ESPs in them, and I don't know how they'd get a firmware update to deliver to them because they're usually pretty bespoke.
There's an OTA, so if you use like FreeRTOS or something on them, you can do OTA updates to ESPs.
That's cool.
yeah, that is a thing, but I don't know how reliable it is.
How
But
is
yeah,
it can versus implemented? Like implemented?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some random devices that are just a ESP that is hooked up to a microcontroller board, and it's
That's
not really
pretty
anything else
scary.
too crazy. They're trying to connect to some Wi-Fi, and then once you configure it, you do the same thing. They have a little tiny captive portal that you use to configure the Wi-Fi on like the device, and then boom, you just connect it to your Wi-Fi, and all of your logs are going to China. But yeah, that's like a thing. So if you have anything like this, or if you use ESPs, or if you develop stuff with ESPs, definitely update the firmware on them. This is like one of the times that you actually really should.
but there's also like this EAP thing as well. Like it can be like negotiated through a rogue AP as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I believe that was more than exploiting the EAP protocol, though, right? Like,
Mhm.
but the interesting thing about it is how many ESPs do you know are connecting to like EAP networks? Like 0. Like
Yeah.
IoT, Internet of Shit.
So I think that there's got to be like a couple of products that might just have this sort of thing in it. Who knows? But this just goes to show that there are still things that can be found in ESP stuff, that we should be updating this stuff, because having these things in products that get rolled out as IoT products and somebody decides to open it and sees the lovely little expressive logo on the chip, will know that they can hit it with these random weird bugs.
I think Espressif had updated the library, but not updated the package that the like Arduino package thing downloads. But I mean, please,
Yeah,
if you can, try and learn how to program these without the Arduino thing, because that's pretty bad.
well, I mean, realistically though, you just need to have it to be. You can download it your own firmware like bin file, and then just toss it on there to flash it. There's like a couple of different scripts for that. So I don't know how much that firmware itself relies on Arduino packaging stuff, but I would definitely check that out too.
Yeah, there was a mention that it was needed to be patched there, so not in this article, I don't think.
I think the silver lining, I might be thinking of something else, is one of these things is triggerable with like malformed probe requests. So next con you have where everyone's being annoying with those little deauthors, just kind of break a few of them.
Oh gosh, like the Wi-Fi pineapple thing where somebody was reading people's pineapples.
Yeah,
break all things.
I mean, it's not like a perma brick. You just like reflash it probably, or like get a new bootloader on it. But you can, yeah.
It's I think it was at I want to say SharkCon or something, where the badges had a vulnerability and people made like somebody like built a botnet out of everyone's like ad hoc badges. That was
Oh man, exploit dev while you're at a conference for the badges of that conference is pretty high stakes.
Cool.
Yeah. They were
pretty cool.
Reflashing firmware on people's badges. Lol. Good stuff.
Yeah. So the last story we have of the night. This California man was sentenced for buying a chemical weapon on the dark web.
Not Florida man?
Right? No, not Florida man this time. Florida man was busy making and manufacturing the chemical weapon.
Actually surprising.
So yeah, this person had been basically talking on a dark web forum asking for a specific chemical to murder his wife, and they purchased this chemical from an undercover federal agent. And they had asked a bunch of questions about, how they're going to send it. They're just very, very incriminating. Like, there's no like way around it. Like, I was just looking at it. Like, it's like, do you use these specific labels for it, or do you, like, how many vials can I get from you? Like, just very, very specific, maliciously intended requests.
Let's work on a 120-pound person.
Yeah, right. Like, how many milligrams?
Can I get 5 pounds of wife murder juice? Thank you.
I've pasted a relevant link into some British humor into the Twitch chat. I suggest you watch it after the show, and it's basically this. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yes.
Do you do poison? Yeah, like how do I expose my wife without compromising myself?
I mean,
can I somehow paint the poison on a surface, like her keyboard or door handle? Would it evaporate? holy shit, this guy.
Yeah, no, it's like very, very specific stuff. It's just interesting though. I guess people are just, I don't know, that's a very extended reach for the, I guess, dark web markets is monitoring poisons, but that's interesting though.
I mean, the
I mean,
part that
it's
stands
bad.
out to me is he's a fucking former PayPal employee.
Damn.
But if
Wait,
you
what?
were the person was a former PayPal employee.
Yeah, it
yeah.
says in the article.
Oh man.
Yeah, no, I mean, you got to feel kind of bad for the undercover FBI agents or whatever whose entire job is to just hang out on dark web forums. It's like, I just can't imagine that would be a particularly interesting thing to do.
Oh no.
You'd also probably see some
I think it might
unpleasant
be
things.
interesting, but just very depressing.
Yeah,
The interest turns into despair very quickly in that kind of environment.
Well, there's
Yeah.
also like, if you could imagine that if somebody is using a dark web forum and the FBI is aware of it, like they can probably get everybody on the forum. Right?
Mhm.
Like,
Right.
I'd imagine that they can nab just about everybody. So I wonder how people defend against that.
It's a little bit of the case of like people who are on the darknet often, like people who use Tor, or like, do you remember I use Tor all the time, you clean it, people are weird?
Yes.
There was that person that came into our Slack and was like, I always hang out on Tor. You guys are so weird. It's like, it's actually weird to always hang out on Tor.
Yeah. Well, not to mention, like, that was like one of the right. It's one of those government spying programs was like, oh yeah, like indicators that this person is someone we're watching. Like, oh, they have ever used Tor. Like,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they only use Tor. That's kind of
yeah.
Well, I think part of the thing with Tor is it's vulnerable to timing attacks if you're using it on a wireless network that might not be exclusive.
I
So
mean, there's
some
a
aspect.
laundry list of shit.
But so like part of that is the more you use Tor, the harder it would be to associate a timing attack. But honestly, like, I'm surprised that there's not I looked around a little bit. I didn't see any scripts or anything that just generate fake traffic. Seems like that would be a way to do that.
There's a lot of stuff, but like this is just a case of like, hey, send me to my address, wife murder juice.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, I don't think any
any
sort of like network traffic spoofing or anything like that, or pattern spoofing.
Right. Yeah. It's just like, here's my
You're like, hi, this is my wife's name. Do you have any specific poisons for somebody with this name, like in build?
It's like the same. It's the same deal as like when people commit a crime and get Bitcoin, and they're like, oh sweet, it's anonymous. But now what do you do with it? You gotta cash it out somewhere.
Yeah.
To actually reap the benefits in real life.
Yeah, the hardest part about financial crime is taking the money.
Yep.
Sure is. Well, hey, it's about 11 o'clock over here in America/New York time zone. I think we should probably call it a night, but I definitely dug this sort of news oriented thing where we could expand it a bit further, because we tend to kind of try to stuff a lot into 2 hours, which is a long time, but we definitely, I feel like we might feel like we run out of time sometimes. So we might have to experiment a bit more with trying to do some of these and inviting some people who have done some of the things that we talk about onto our show, because we run out of time at times as well to do that. So yeah, if anybody here who's listening has any opinions, you can add us on Twitter and tell us whether or not you dug a news-focused show. We might be able to try to do less guests and have it for maybe more special occasions, and try to maybe do more news-oriented and longer deep dives into stories.
I guess the ThugCrowd Twitter account is probably a good suggestion box for send a DM, and it may or may never get read. I don't know.
It may or may not end up on Reddit for some reason. So actually, I forgot to put this into the notes, but we have r/ThugCrowd. So if anybody wants to join that and share links to it or ask us silly questions, go for it. Shout out to Dade for starting that for us. But yeah, we're gonna try to use it a bit more just to aggregate some links because there's a lot of good stuff that gets shared on there. And also we have to kind of look at we end up finding a bunch of our screenshots that we post just kind of reposted on Reddit and like Master Hacker with like a bajillion upvotes, and we're like, damn it. So
yeah, it's good shit. Also, like, yeah, let us know who from the news, where just in general you like to see on, because there are so many people. There are really just so many people. Hard to figure out who and when and what and where. But
yeah.
And if you want to be a guest, then you're probably not going to be a guest. If you are already a speaker, if you already actually have something to talk about that's not DDoS related, it's not not Mirai variants, or if you have an interesting topic, we would like to talk to you. But I'm sure you know who you are.
You must have at least 20 letters worth of certificates.
Yes.
20 is amateur hour.
No, we definitely want to have, if anybody, as I said before, if anybody wants to submit more write-ups, we'd love to read them and go over them on the air. Have more time to just deep dive into some different write-ups and things. If you want to talk about a write-up you're done, we can definitely work it out too. But yeah, definitely want to be a bit more community focused. So thanks to everybody for listening and always sticking out, hanging out with us. Does anybody have anything else to say before we get off the air?
Shut up and get a lawyer for Dan.
Bugs, not drugs.
Buy poison.
Gay do crime.
Shout out to Lumpus and Splats.
Oh shit! I never changed my name from UK Drillers.
Shout outs to everybody but UK Drillers.
Yeah, DDoSing just is not cool. So
yeah,
someone mentioned
shame on you, United Kingdom Drillers.
BST +0, the time zone nobody gives a shit about.
Oh, also, one more thing. In the show notes, check out in the cheat codes, check out KexSec had released the write-up for how they've been hacking all the signs around the world.
Pretty
so
funny.
They put that in Pastebin, so definitely take a look at that because that's really interesting. We'll be
we appreciate the shout out as well. There's a ThugCrowd shout out in there, but please, don't implicate us in your.
Yeah, we definitely had nothing to do with it, but it was interesting for sure. They actually did something that I thought was. They actually did something. I had a different idea of what they were doing, but